Hello, and welcome to Just Scare Us Already, the podcast where we discuss old and new horror movies, give our opinions, and try to find something that will scare us. If you like what you hear, give us a like and a subscribe. Let us know down below the topics you want to hear about. But for today, let's get right into it.
Hey, yeah. So, with a little less than 2 weeks before Halloween, we have two new entries in the horror film genre. First, we have the recent theatrical release of the sequel to 2022 Smile and Smile 2, starring Naomi Scott, and the straight to streaming film Die Alone, starring Carrie Ann Moss and Douglas Smith. Did these two new films have what it takes to scare us, or will we still have to continue to wait for something to just scare us already? So, Shai, tell us a little bit about Smile 2.
So, Smile 2 was directed and written by Parker Finn, starring Naomi Scott, Rosemary DeWitt, and Lucas Gage. It follows a superstar, Sky Riley, as she embarks on a world tour experiencing increasingly terrifying and inescapable events. Overwhelmed by the escalating horrors and the pressure of fame, Sky is forced to face her past. This one currently sits with a 83% critic score and an 84% audience score on Rotten Tomato. This is a higher score actually than the first movie, which currently holds an 80% critic score and a 77% audience score. Granted, obviously, it's been about like 4 years since the first one, so a lot more people have had time to review it. But do you agree with the ratings comparatively?
Um, no, I think on my spectrum it would have been probably a little lower. I thought the film Smile 2 was decent. There's nothing new, and based on all the trailers, I felt like I had already watched most of the movie.
Yeah.
There to me there was no real surprises outside of the trailer scenes, and the ending was very predictable. How about you?
No, I agree. Sadly, and I think this is all the fault of trailers and us seeing so many movies now that I'm seeing
Mhm.
so many trailers. Because usually I don't go out of my way to look up trailers online because of how they've been kind of ruining movies. But because
Mhm.
I'm in so many theaters and I'm shown every version of the trailers, yeah, sadly, the first trailer didn't give away too much, but the second trailer gave away basically the whole twist. Well, not really well, I guess kind of the twist. But yeah, so in my opinion, the first one was better. This one had its merits. I thought the acting was good. I thought that the directing was good. I thought the editing was not great. But that might be me. I remember the first one had a lot of close-ups, but this one had so much spinning and upside down shots, which I thought were just unnecessary and
Mhm.
repetitive. Like
Mhm.
every transition was an upside down landscape. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I get it. So, but yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it. Did any of the parts scare you or make you jump or anything?
There was actually one jump scare that got me.
Same.
Yeah, I
Same.
mean, I actually jumped. Um,
Was it the phone scene? I'm not going to give anything away, but was it the phone scene? Because I jumped a little out of my seat when it happened.
yeah. It definitely was a jump that actually made me jump. I actually,
Yeah.
squirmed in my seat real quick. So yeah. There was one that got me, but other than that, everything else was to me cliche. Um,
Yeah.
like you said, the film had a lot of upside down shots and spinning camera shots that got a little dizzying. I actually at one point had to close one of my eyes to
I
to
closed my eyes
keep
most of
keep
the
my
day.
balance. Um, yeah, I thought Naomi Scott did a good job in the role of Sky Riley. Nothing stand out, but she brings life to the character. So
Hmm.
the other characters, the outside characters, were all just filler. Even the mother's
Yeah.
character was kind of eh. You know.
I thought they could have done more with her um, and kind of their relationship. Like I know that they did a decent amount, but I just felt like they could
Hmm.
have focused on it more so than her relationship with that friend,
Hmm.
Gemma. I thought that was kind of a wasted storyline or part of the
Yeah.
story for a twist that I am still very confused by. And I think that was
Well.
the issue with this one. The first one, it messed the basically the creature messes with the person's
Right.
psychology and is trying to break them down. What I didn't understand though was this one, you have a pop star, someone who is going to be seen by millions of people, which, side note, love the ending because that's what I wanted to happen. But why would this monster then, like, it torments her, I feel like, way worse than it tormented Rose in the first movie.
Yeah, yeah, I thought so too. I thought the first one, they were trying to build exactly what this demon or entity does to each individual. So it played more on her investigating what was going on and everything. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
this one, it did seem like the entity was like really screwing with her
Just
head
being
big time.
so
I mean,
mean.
from the start. I know there's a part in the film, and I don't think it's a spoiler, but when she meets the guy, I think his name was Murphy in the bar,
Morris, I
and
think.
was it Morris? Okay.
Something
And
like that.
he kind of explains to her that within 4 days the thing
Mm-hmm.
will drive you crazy, and there's no way around it. So it kind of gives you a timeline, almost like the other films, like The Ring and
Yeah.
One Missed Call and stuff, where you have a certain number of days and then you're gonna die. So
Mm-hmm.
that was interesting, but yeah, it seemed like the entity definitely did worse to her than than the
Which I just didn't
first
get
movie.
because, in my opinion, and like I don't think this is a spoiler, but I'll put a spoiler alert just in case. But Riley was already, or not Riley, Sky Riley was already a
Yeah.
pretty screwed up character compared to Rose. Like Rose is a psychologist in the first
Hmm.
movie who basically had like her head on straight. This
Well,
girl was already some. Go ahead.
well, remember
Well,
though,
yeah,
in the first one, she had the mother who was uh,
yeah, but
um,
everyone has to have trauma in order for this thing to affect them. Remember, that's why the guy had to kill the brother. The beginning of this movie, spoiler: the guy had to kill the brother in front of him and then
right,
kill him because or then kill himself because then he needed he needed him to see
right.
trauma.
But I'm referring to her childhood. Her mother
Yeah,
and watching her mother die from an overdose and
yeah, but she
stuff.
was still like kind of mentally there versus Riley, who was an already a struggling addict who had just gone through sobriety. Like I feel like she would have been easy to break down, that
Hmm.
this enemy didn't have to go so hard on her. Plus, for it to get what it wants, I mean, I'm sorry. I just, during a lot of the scenes that Riley or that Sky was going through, if I knew what was happening, like after she gets told the way to destroy this monster, I would have just like killed myself in my apartment. Like
Well,
she had many
maybe.
opportunities to do so.
Well, maybe because, like you said, she was already broken down so much. Maybe she was an easy mark, and maybe that's why the entity screwed with her even more, because she was so easy. Whereas opposed to the first character in Smile One, she was a bit stronger. So it was going to
Maybe,
take
yeah,
more to drive her insane than it took to drive Sky insane.
that's true. What did you think of the character design when it was shown in this one?
I,
Because I had
I
a serious
I thought it
feeling.
was weird. I thought it was weird.
Yeah, I it was so CGI heavy looking
Yeah,
versus the
yeah.
first one. Even though both are CGI, this one looked so grossly fake that it actually like genuinely bothered me in theaters. I was really upset because I love, as we talked about in our first episode, I believe ever, which was character
Hmm.
design. I love the
Hmm.
Smile character. I think it's very creative. It's very new, and this one looked so wonky.
Yeah, I was thrown by it too. I was like, wait a minute, did it change? Did it change shape?
Yeah,
Or, how come it wouldn't be the same creature unless everyone sees it differently for, somehow?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
There were aspects of it that were the same, but it just it looked weird. It looked
Yeah,
faker
it looked
than the
almost
first one.
it looked almost animal compared to human. Or
Yeah.
yeah, it was weird.
But I mean, I liked the ending. It was what I wanted to happen. The very
Um,
ending.
I thought the ending was predictable.
I
I
mean,
could see
yeah,
it. I could see it a mile away.
but
I
it was
just
what I wanted.
well, and it's been done before.
Yeah.
Remember Truth or Dare, and she goes
Yeah.
online and puts it out there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of similar to that. So yeah, predictable. It definitely leaves the door open for a possible
Oh,
Smile
for sure. They
three.
will be making a third one. I think this movie has done well enough that they'll make a third.
I just wonder if, and we could put a spoiler alert here because I don't want to give away the ending, but I
Yeah, no
wonder
problem.
if it affects
More
one
than one.
person or more than one. So
That's what I was thinking. But I will say, end of spoiler alert, but the 15 minutes or so before the ending, I'm really confused still by that. Because I get what they were trying to do. Because in the first one, spoiler for the first one, when she leaves the cabin, or she thinks she leaves the cabin with the police guy, it ends up being a trick in her mind
hmm
to
hmm
get her to stay in the cabin. But the way that they did that same twist in this one, I'm very confused on where it started and where it ended
yeah,
because of all the things at the end.
yeah, I thought about that too, and the only conclusion I could come up with is that it started before she woke up in the rehab
That's what I
facility.
was thinking when she passed on the apartment. But
hmm
I didn't like that part. I didn't like that that whole chunk of it was a possibly a twist, or it had multiple twists within it.
hmm
Because it just kind of felt like and maybe that was the point, was to make us as confused as Sky Riley was.
hmm
But it just kind of felt like twist after twist after twist after twist, just to kind of have it. That it kind of
Right.
got really frustrating to me, where I was like, okay, I'm trying to keep up with this movie though, and figure
Yeah.
out how things are happening.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. After watching it, and then after I thought about it, I was like, okay, yeah, that's probably what they were doing, like the first one.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they do come out with a Smile three, how it evolves.
I am too. I hope it's something really interesting, because I thought this one was really cool to have a superstar, because she's forced to be around people and she's forced to be out. Versus
hmm
in the first one, Rose, although she was a psychologist, so she had to see patients all the time, they quickly got rid of that. Like, they quickly had her leave her job, go on rest. And so
hmm
basically she was alone majority of the time, or could have been alone majority of the time. So this one I thought
Right.
was a really cool thing to go with. So I would be interested to see what thing they would try to do in the third one. Maybe it'll be a kid, something like what's some Come Play, or any of those movies where it's a kid being haunted, Boogeyman.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see. But what do you score this? Because technically, you did get scared at one point.
Well, I won't say I got scared. I jumped. So but overall, I thought Smile 2 followed a lot of the normal, horror movie tropes and cliches. It didn't really add anything new. Um, and it wasn't a horrible film. It's a decent horror film, especially for the Halloween season. So for me, I give Smile 2 a meh.
You're such a hard critic. I give it a thumbs up. I think it's worth the watch. I think it's very much worth the watch in theaters. I think with the sound of theaters and the darkness of a theater, I think that the scares that they have within this movie are elevated by that darkness of the theater and by the sound being so much louder in a theater than at home.
hmm
And you can't look away as easily in a theater than you can at home, distracting yourself with your phone. So I think that it's well worth the watch. I think that there's a lot of people who would get scared at multiple scenes.
hmm
The fact that I jumped at one, granted, it was very similar to the one that I jumped at in Smile 1 as well. Um, I'm gonna give it its props. It got me. My heart raced a little bit after I jumped. I was like, "Oh, damn!"
Okay.
So I give it a thumbs up. I'm not gonna give it a golden kitty because I don't think it was perfect, but I definitely think it's well worth the watch and a
All
great
right.
sequel.
Cool. Cool.
So that's Smile too. I say
All
go
right.
see it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a decent film. It's great for the Halloween season. So yeah, if you want to go watch something, uh, to celebrate Halloween, definitely go see it in theaters, but don't look for anything spectacular. It's decent. So, how
Okay,
about
so going
the straight to streaming Die Alone?
Die Alone, directed and written by Laurel Dean, starring Douglas Smith, Carrie Ann Moss, and Kimberly Sue Murray. This movie tells the story of a young man who has amnesia. He bands together with a rugged survivalist in a zombie like outbreak being called the Reclaimed in order to find his girlfriend. They must not only survive the Reclaimed, but also the survivors. Currently, this movie is unrated on Rotten Tomato, but holds a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb by like 200 reviews. It's not even scored on Metacritic. Like, obviously, because so many movies nowadays are straight to streaming, which is really frustrating with October, especially. I was
Hmm.
really looking forward to movies being in theater, but I feel like everything is Fandango at home, Shutter, AMC Plus, barely even any on Netflix, to be honest, coming
Hmm.
out, and then Halloween. It's kind of frustrating because I like this movie.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, here we have one of three or four movies that were released straight to streaming this week. I think straight to streaming films are starting to get that stigma that if they aren't released in theaters, then the film is probably low quality and not good.
Hmm.
But I will say, Die Alone does not fall into that stereotype. The film is a slow burn. I will say that it does drag. So it takes a while to get to the main plot, and by then the outcome seems pretty predictable. However, I like the story of the idea of the story,
Hmm.
and I thought it was original, although not fully thought out. How about you?
Really, I thought it was really thought out. I thought it was a really good movie. I like you said, it was a slow burn. I went into it after you had watched it and already said it was worth the watch because, like
Hmm.
you said, there was three movies that came out straight to streaming. We watched a few of them to kind of figure out which one to do with Smile Two. A lot
Hmm.
of them, sadly, did fall under the stigma of being a little bit lower quality and not that good. However,
Hmm.
Die Alone, I really enjoyed it. I thought that it had sympathetic characters. I thought that it had enough of a mystery that I was also kind of wanting to know where it was going on and where things were going. I
Hmm.
thought that their take on the zombies, although sort of annoyed me at first when I heard like, oh, it's plant based and it's these plants claiming it because it made me think of The Mist.
Oh,
Not The Mist, sorry.
okay.
The Happening, that
Okay.
horrible movie with Mark Wahlberg.
You know,
And Zoe Deschanel.
it's in the wind.
Yeah. What? Me? Never. I love that movie. But I so it kind of was like, oh great, okay, one of those plant ones. But I think that they lent more into the movie similar like The Girl with the Gift, was it?
Hmm.
Where
Yeah.
the plant spores affected the children.
Right.
So I kind of did enjoy that. It was a new take on zombies. It was a new way of going about. And I thought that the twist was foreshadowed in a really good way where I caught it for only a millisecond where I said, oh, that's interesting and weird, but didn't pay enough attention to it that when the twist came, I kind of went, oh,
Okay.
that's really good because I knew one of the twists. I saw that one coming. I
Hmm.
don't want to give any spoilers, but about what happened to his girlfriend, I saw that coming. That
Okay.
twist, I kind of was picking up on very quickly, but I couldn't understand why he was the way he was. And so
Okay.
that twist, I was like, oh, that was good. It was foreshadowed just enough that I didn't see it coming. I don't want to give anything away, so I'm being very
Right.
careful.
No, and I think for me it's the exact opposite. I
Really
saw I saw what was happening to him kind of midway
coming.
through the movie. I
Oh,
was like,
okay.
oh, okay, particularly with one scene where he goes and meets the woman and her son that were hiding out in the
Yeah.
cabin. That kind of
Hmm.
gave it away to me there.
Oh,
What I
okay.
didn't see was the
Her.
the outcome of, yeah, um, May
Okay, so
and
opposite
him.
mindsets.
Yeah, so
So
totally
we were paying
opposite.
attention to two different things, maybe. Because yeah,
Yeah.
that one I picked up on real quick, but then I was just kind of like, how? How is this the outcome that it is? And
Hmm.
didn't see the other one come. So we both saw A and B on different points. So very
Right.
interesting. But I thought it was well done. I love the ideas when they do zombie movies of focusing on the internal issue, kind of like Walking Dead, where it's much more the people are the issue.
Right.
But with the twist of what happened to the girlfriend, that explored something very interesting as well of how far you would go
Hmm.
for someone you love. And I think that was a really cool thing to explore in this because it kind of also reminded me of Maggie with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, because it focuses so much heavily on relationships and kind of trying to keep all these relationships during a zombie apocalypse.
Right.
So I liked it. It's definitely a slow burn, not really horror in an old sense, but I think it's a
Hmm.
great zombie take. It's a great take on a zombie movie.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Like I said, I thought the idea was pretty original. The reason why I say I didn't think it was fully thought out, it's because they basically say you can't kill them.
Uh
So
huh.
what happens to them? I mean,
I think it showed
well, but then once they become, and we could put a spoiler on
skeletal.
this. Yeah, once they become skeletal, do they? What happens to them? Do they stop existing? You
Well, no,
know,
because it showed that they kept moving, so I think they just become like unable to do as much. But I
they
think they're
just
forced to live
exist.
forever. Yeah.
But bones don't work that way. Human bones eventually deteriorate.
Well,
So
maybe they'll eventually deteriorate back into the earth because I think it's the plants that are helping it move as a skeleton.
right,
But I think
right,
they don't. I'm assuming they don't eat the way a zombie eats. Once they get to that point, they just,
right,
like you said, exist, and that eventually they will just decay back into the earth. That's what I'm assuming is what happens. Because yeah, it's
right,
not traditional. You can't shoot in the head, anything like that, to kill them. So I think it's just like endless suffering. Because
right.
especially with what the big spoiler was, you would really suffer with that. It's actually a very horrifying thing if you think
Well,
about it.
I mean, for all intent and purpose, you're dead.
Well, okay,
So
big spoiler, big spoiler. So skip this part if you don't want to hear. But the fact that if they feed, they remember. So like
right,
once you get to the point of like being like 90 years old, let's say, your like body is decaying and you will eventually remember part of that until you can no
yeah,
longer feed.
yeah. But if you have things like that, I mean, there would be hordes of them. So unless you're in the middle of nowhere, you would think, I mean, cities would be totally overrun, and then they would have nothing, they would have no food source.
That's yeah, so they'll just decay over
Yeah.
time
So,
once
so
they get to that point of not having food source.
yeah, I
But
mean,
if
you,
you're one
you,
of the
you,
early ones, you still kind of suffer with that. You suffer with that slow
true.
decay. It's very terrifying. Like if you think about how it would be to wake up in that moment.
No, I mean, true. It's a scary thought. I would have liked maybe a little more information. But
Oh, for sure.
yeah, it didn't make or break the movie. For me, it was like, okay, it's plausible, but I would just like to know, well,
Yeah.
how are you supposed to get away from these things? you know.
I think that's the point that you just can't because that's what the ending kind of shows.
Hmm.
What the decision made was that there is no escaping this except because she even says like I'm the extinct one
Right.
or the one going
Right.
extinct. So it's kind of like, yeah, we're all just. So I think it was kind of like Girl with the Gift, where they kind of realized like, oh, these children who have been infected with this spore, they're
Hmm.
going to be the next generation. Like they're going to be the ones to take over, and all of us who aren't infected are going to be extinct. So I think it was
Right.
kind of under that same mindset, but just like yeah, like you said, kind of not going into detail as much. of what
Right.
was going on and how it happened and all the infected stuff. But yeah, it didn't make or break it. The story is much more internal than external, so it's not really focusing on the world versus the relationships. So,
Right.
but I thought it
Right.
was good. I don't. It falls under horror because it's a zombie movie, but I wouldn't say it's a real horror to me.
Hmm.
But I'm still going to give it a thumbs up because I think it's worth the watch. I really hope people watch this movie and that it can get attention because I think it's very good. Not to say I want a
Yeah.
sequel, but
Yeah, I think it plays similar to The Last of Us. It's more about individuals and their struggle. Um, Although for me, like you said, being considered a horror film and a zombie movie, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more action. I
yeah,
thought I thought Carrie Ann Moss does an okay job as May. However, Douglas Smith as the lead character Ethan was a huge swing and a miss. I mean,
really,
his portrayal of this character was uninteresting and bland. I mean, I felt
that's
nothing
true. He
for
was
him.
very. I felt for him. I felt for him because you could. He did the confused part really well of a guy waking up with amnesia over
He
and over
always
again.
seemed confused. He
Well,
seemed
he
confused through the
was.
whole movie.
That was the point, though. He's confused majority of it. I will say there were some parts though where he was like very kind of chill with what was happening. Like
uh,
even in dangerous moments, he was like, "Oh, okay," and I was like, "That's not how you would react, especially if you were someone with amnesia. I feel like you'd be much more scared majority of the time than just
right.
kind of like there." So I do kind of agree. I Douglas Smith was sadly not that great. Carrie Ann Moss was really good. Kimberly Sue Murray was good in the scenes that she had. The one that played Emma, the girlfriend. I thought she did a good job. Douglas Smith, I don't. Maybe it was the direction that he was given of like just be confused all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I have to ask. I've never had amnesia, and I don't think I've ever
Same.
known anyone who had amnesia. But if you have amnesia, would you know you have amnesia? Would you say I have amnesia?
Well, did he though?
No.
Until she said it, didn't he say like
No. In
I'm
one
forgetful? You don't remember?
he says I have amnesia,
Oh, yeah.
and
I
it was
guess maybe maybe it's just a quick excuse for things. You're like, I don't remember anything. I must have amnesia.
right. But then he would remember something. You know, he would talk about, oh, I'm looking for so and so and whatnot. After you watch the movie, you can kind of say, okay, yeah, it's probably because he's been told the same thing over and over and over
Hmm.
again. So the bits and pieces are starting to, connect in his
Uh
head
huh.
as a memory. But yeah, it just kind of threw me because, and I believe it was when he first meets May, and he
It
says, "I
might be.
have
I
amnesia."
wasn't. I think it was. I wasn't because it was so slow. I wasn't paying that much attention at the very beginning, so I might have missed him say I have amnesia. I think I just heard her say he had amnesia, or to tell not tell people he had amnesia or something like that.
Right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, I'm from what I'm assuming is his forgetfulness is kind of like Memento. I gotta stop mentioning movies because I gotta keep putting these posters up when I edit. But like Memento, where it kind of goes from the newest memory is lost
Hmm.
going
Hmm.
backwards because at one point, big spoiler, she says at some point you forgot who I was. So I'm assuming
Hmm.
he remembered everything about them still, but couldn't recognize her. So like the newer things was what was
Right.
slowly being erased. So that's what I'm
Yeah,
assuming is why.
that makes sense. Well, no, then it would be the well. Yeah, I
Well,
guess.
yeah, because
Yeah.
then he would always know he's looking for Emma. He
Right.
just wouldn't remember anything after that.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So what do you give this? I don't think you gave it a rating. I gave it a thumbs up.
So Die Alone. I think it works as an okay horror film. Like you said, it's more mystery kind of romance kind of slash zombie movie
Drama.
kind of thing. Um,
Yeah.
but I have to give this one a Mad Kitty as well.
Oh,
I
you're
thought
so
the pace of
mean.
the film dragged. It was filled with the flashbacks and one-on-one conversations, and no real sense of suspense. So I
Hmm.
felt that kept it from being a better horror film. I
I can see
definitely,
that.
I definitely don't think this film would have succeeded in theaters. So
No,
streaming was definitely the better route. But yeah, it was just for me the first, I want to say 40 minutes of the movie was so slow. I mean, I literally was like, okay, come on, get to the point, get to the point.
I can understand that. I really probably would have texted you and said this isn't worth it
Mm-hmm.
39, 40 minutes into it if it
Mm-hmm.
hadn't been for the fact that you told me already that it was a good watch,
Mm-hmm.
that I kind of sat through it and said, okay, let's see where this goes. So I do agree. Maybe I'll give it a mat. I will say though, if you can find it, watch it.
Mm-hmm. But
But yeah, don't expect
don't
jump
waste
out
any money on
scares.
it. Yeah.
No, I'm hoping that maybe if it does well enough on Fandango at home, maybe Netflix or Hulu will pick it up, so it can be
Mm-hmm.
on an easier to reach, or maybe even Tubi. I've been watching a lot of good movies on Tubi,
Mm-hmm.
um, so hopefully this can get picked up by one of them because it would be great if more people could have see it. But yeah, I don't think it's really worth the money to like buy or
Yeah.
rent.
No, it was worth the watch. And when I texted you and said it was a good watch, the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes saved it for me.
Yes.
Because yeah, at the 30-minute mark, I was kind of like, okay, this movie's just going to be a bunch of talking, and they're never really gonna. It's
Uh
going to wind
huh.
up being one of those movies where the ending's just going to be the last 5 minutes and boom, that's it. But then it started
Yeah.
to progress. It started to pick up, and I was like, oh, okay, it started getting interesting. So yeah, I think the last 20, 25 minutes saved it. So it's definitely a slow burn, worth the watch, but wait till it, like you said, it's on Netflix or one of the other streaming channels that you're already paying for. Don't go out of your way to rent it on Fandango at home or purchase it, and it'll be one of those movies you may not watch again for a long time.
Yeah. Well, those are our opinions on Smile 2 and Die Alone. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully, we'll get something that scares us a little bit more than what Smile 2 did. Gotta jump. That's something. I gave it a thumbs up. So we're on
yeah.
the up now. We're on the positive.
I will actually change my decision on Smile 2. I'll give it a thumbs up because you're right. It did scare me. It did not, I won't say scare me.
I wasn't
It
scared.
made me jump. It made me jump. It actually had a moment where I flinched. I was like, whoa,
And what's so
you know.
funny, I knew it was going to happen. I was waiting particularly for it, and I
Mhm.
still jumped.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, okay, that's a good jump scare because usually if I can predict it, I'm good. But that still got me. So,
Oh yeah.
but yes,
Yeah,
definitely
it
season
definitely
3
got me.
can. Well, let's see if any other movies that we can find, hopefully on streaming and whatnot, will scare us. I don't know if there's any horror movies coming out in theaters anytime soon. Um,
Um
I don't remember when
yeah.
Companion comes out.
Yeah, I think a
Oh,
lot of them
Hereditary.
are
Not Hereditary. Heretic.
Heretic. Yeah, but I
Heretic will
think
probably
that's
be the
no
next one.
isn't that
November
November?
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
But
I
I'm
think
just
I
saying the
think
next one to come.
yeah, I think a lot of the theater releases are November and December.
Yeah.
So most likely we probably won't get much in the next week or two.
But we have something good planned for our Halloween episode or coming out near Halloween. So make sure that you stay tuned for next week. Give us a like, a subscribe, and definitely follow us on all of our socials down below. And hopefully we'll see you guys next week on Just Scare Us Already.